Mount Everest has killed more than 300 people. Most deaths occur above 26,000 feet, in the death zone, where the human body cannot sustain life for more than a brief period. On May 25, 2006, 50-year-old Australian mountaineer Lincoln Hall reached the summit of Everest via the northeast ridge route on the Tibet side. He had climbed for decades. This was his second attempt on Everest. His first, in 1984, had failed. Now, at 50, he stood on top of the world. But he reached the summit late. Approximately 4 in the afternoon. In high-altitude mountaineering, summit time matters. Descending in darkness is dangerous. Descending in darkness while exhausted and oxygen-deprived is often fatal. Hall began his descent. Within hours, something went wrong. His coordination faltered. His speech became confused. He could not walk properly. His Sherpa guides recognized the symptoms immediately. Cerebral edema. His brain was swelling inside his skull. At that altitude, it is a death sentence without immediate descent. But Hall could no longer descend on his own. He collapsed at approximately 28,200 feet. The Sherpas stayed with Hall as long as they could. But at that altitude, in the dark, in plummeting temperatures, staying meant dying with him. They had families. They made the decision that mountaineering sometimes forces. They left him. They radioed down that Lincoln Hall had died on the mountain. His wife was informed. His children were told their father was gone. But Hall was not dead. He was sitting on the slope at 28,000 feet, alone in total darkness, in temperatures approaching -40 degrees Fahrenheit. He had no tent. No sleeping bag. His oxygen had run out. His brain was swollen. He was hallucinating. Later, he would recall fragments. He believed he was on a boat. He saw people who were not there. He had conversations with them. His mind was failing, but his body, inexplicably, continued. His heart kept beating. His lungs kept pulling in the thin air. He sat through the night. Hours passed. The cold should have killed him. Hypothermia should have stopped his heart. But it did not. When dawn came, he was still sitting there. Still alive. On the morning of May 26, a separate climbing team was ascending toward the summit. The team was led by Dan Mazur, an American guide, along with 2 clients and a Sherpa. They were moving up the northeast ridge route, the same path Hall had descended the day before. At approximately 28,000 feet, they saw something ahead. A figure. Sitting upright in the snow. They assumed it was a body. Everest is scattered with the dead. Bodies remain where they fall, frozen in place, sometimes for decades. As they got closer, the figure moved. Mazur stopped. The man was alive. He was sitting cross-legged in the snow, his jacket unzipped and open to the freezing air. His hands were bare. Severe frostbite had turned his fingers black. His face was similarly damaged. But he was conscious. He turned and looked at them. He spoke. His words were confused, rambling. He asked where he was. He did not recognize the mountain. Mazur realized immediately what he was looking at. A man who should not be alive. A man who had spent the night at 28,000 feet with no shelter, no oxygen, and a brain that was dying. Mazur and his team faced an immediate decision. They were 2 hours from the summit. They had trained for this. Paid for this. Everest summits are rare achievements. But a man was dying in front of them. The ethical calculation was instant. They abandoned their summit attempt. They began trying to help Hall. They gave him oxygen. They zipped his jacket closed. They put his gloves back on his frozen hands. Hall was confused. He thought he was somewhere else. He spoke about his children, his wife, but his words were incoherent. Cerebral edema had scrambled his cognition. Mazur radioed down. He reported that Lincoln Hall, declared dead the night before, was alive. The response was disbelief. Then urgency. A rescue was organized. But getting Hall down from 28,000 feet would take time. He could not walk. His legs were too weak. Every few steps, he collapsed. The team had to support him completely. They moved slowly. 50 feet. Then rest. Another 50 feet. Rest. The descent took hours. By midday, other climbers and Sherpas arrived to assist. Hall was lowered, carried, dragged down the mountain. The descent continued through the day and into the next. Hall drifted in and out of lucidity. At times, he seemed aware of what was happening. At other times, he spoke nonsense. The cerebral edema was still affecting his brain. But he was moving. Slowly, with total assistance, but moving. By the evening of May 26, he had been lowered to a camp at approximately 21,000 feet. Medical personnel assessed him. The frostbite was catastrophic. His fingers, toes, nose, and parts of his face would require amputation or extensive treatment. But he was alive. His core temperature was stabilizing. His brain swelling would take days to resolve. He was evacuated by helicopter the following day. At a hospital in Kathmandu, the full extent of his injuries became clear. He lost the tips of his fingers on both hands. Portions of his toes. His nose required reconstructive surgery. The frostbite scars on his face were permanent. Neurological tests showed no lasting brain damage. The swelling had subsided. Cognitively, he was intact. He had survived a night at 28,000 feet. Something that should not be survivable. Medical professionals could not fully explain it. Hall's survival became international news. The man declared dead who walked off the mountain. But Hall himself did not see it as miraculous. In interviews after his recovery, he was characteristically understated. He acknowledged he should have died. He said he had no memory of the night itself. Just fragments. Hallucinations. Cold that stopped feeling like cold. His survival, he believed, was not willpower or strength. It was biology and luck. His body, for reasons no one could fully explain, did not shut down. His heart kept beating at a temperature and altitude where hearts typically stop. The cerebral edema, which should have killed him or left him brain dead, resolved without permanent damage. Remove the rescue team finding him, and he dies on the mountain. Remove his body's inexplicable refusal to quit, and he dies in the night. Both had to happen. Hall returned to Australia. He underwent multiple surgeries. He adapted to life with shortened fingers and reconstructed features. He continued to write and speak about mountaineering. He did not climb Everest again. He did not need to. In 2012, 6 years after his survival, Lincoln Hall died of mesothelioma, an aggressive cancer. He was 56 years old. Dan Mazur and his team received recognition for their decision to abandon their summit and save Hall's life. But Mazur was uncomfortable with the attention. He said the decision was not heroic. It was simply human. You do not walk past a dying man to reach a summit. The climbing community largely agreed, though not universally. Everest has a complicated ethical landscape. Climbers are responsible for their own survival. Stopping to help someone else can endanger your own life. Resources are finite. Oxygen, time, energy. The decision to help is not always clear. In Hall's case, the decision was made easier by timing and proximity. Mazur's team was fresh, ascending, with full supplies. Hall was directly in their path. Had the circumstances been different, the outcome might have been different. Hall understood this. He never framed himself as deserving rescue. He was simply the recipient of it. His survival raised questions that mountaineering still grapples with. How much risk is acceptable to save another climber? When does self-preservation outweigh moral obligation? There are no universal answers. Each situation is different. Each decision is made in real time, at altitude, with incomplete information. The same season Hall survived, another climber, David Sharp, died on Everest. Sharp was found alive but dying in a similar location on the mountain. Multiple climbers passed him on their way to the summit. Some stopped briefly. Most continued. Sharp died alone. The contrast between Hall's rescue and Sharp's death sparked intense debate. Why was one man saved and the other left to die? The circumstances were different. Sharp was found later in the day by climbers already exhausted from their own summit pushes. He was semi-conscious, barely responsive. Moving him would have been nearly impossible. Hall, despite his condition, could speak and respond. He could be moved with assistance. But the debate continued. Some argued that all climbers in distress deserve rescue attempts. Others argued that self-preservation must come first, that the mountain makes the rules, not ethics. Hall himself weighed in. He said Sharp's death was tragic, but he did not judge the climbers who passed him. At that altitude, in that condition, decisions are made with diminished cognitive function and extreme physical stress. Judging from below, in safety, is easy. Deciding at 28,000 feet is different. Hall spent his remaining years reflecting on what happened. He wrote about it. He spoke about it when asked. But he never claimed to understand it fully. Why did his body not quit when it should have? Why did the rescue team appear exactly when they did? Why did his brain recover when cerebral edema at that altitude usually causes permanent damage or death? He had no answers. Just gratitude and awareness. Awareness that survival at that level is not about strength or preparation. It is about variables beyond control. Weather. Timing. Biology. Luck. He did everything wrong that day. He summited too late. He ignored early symptoms. He pushed beyond his limits. And yet he lived. Others have done everything right and died anyway. The mountain does not reward virtue or punish mistakes consistently. It simply is. Hall's story became a reference point in high-altitude medicine. His case was studied alongside others who survived extreme exposure. The data showed patterns, but also massive individual variation. Some bodies shut down quickly. Others persist. Inexplicably. There is no formula. Just probabilities. And Hall existed in the far tail of the distribution. Lincoln Hall's survival did not change mountaineering. Climbers still push limits. Summits still matter. People still die on Everest every season. His story became one among many. A remarkable one, but not unique in its tragedy or fortune. What it did change was perception. The idea that death on a mountain is always the result of failure or mistake. Hall's experience showed that survival and death at extreme altitude are not always logical. You can do everything right and die. You can do everything wrong and live. The margin is impossibly thin. The mountain decides. In 2012, when Hall died of cancer, the mountaineering community mourned. But his death was not on a mountain. It was in a hospital, surrounded by family. He had 6 more years than he should have had. 6 years to write, to speak, to live. Everest remains. The death zone is still there, above 26,000 feet, claiming lives every season. Hall's survival remains an outlier in the data. A statistical anomaly. A man who sat through a night that should have killed him. And when the sun rose, he was still there. Still breathing. Against every probability. Against every expectation. Alive.